Magandang araw sa inyong lahat.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening po sa lahat ng nakikinig po.
Hello to all our viewers from here and around the world.
Napakaganda na ating talintiman ngayong hapon ito.
Isang mainit na pagbati po sa inyong lahat.
Well, friends,
welcome to the Bridges Show.
I'm very happy to be here, and I think it should be a really interesting and fun topic.
What are the things you want to learn? So I wanna take it from there and then I listen to them.
meron silang mga mithiin upang maging makabuluhan pa ang pagiging Katoliko. Lalong-lalo na sa susunod na henerasyon.
Sa akin po, sa mga kabataan, use competence as a basis.
In real life, hindi naman talaga tayo tumitigil sa buhay. Kailangan talaga tuloy lang ang buhay kahit anong challenges natin.
Palawan, Cebu, Baguio City, Atty. Dwight, pati La Union. So we are saying that revenge travel is real.
Mas kailangan natin na i-share ang hiwaga ng sinin sa mga tao.
Food and health should go hand in hand. So yan ang gusto namin paratingin sa gobyerno.
If you will just devote your life teaching, hindi ka yayaman sa pera, pero yayaman ka sa tao.
Siyempre, ang pinakamaganda po naman sa ating universidad ay yung talagang natuturuan po tayo kung paano maging mabuting tao.
Happy anniversary to Bridges! Here at Bridges, we build bridges of faith, bridges of hope, and bridges of love.
Women have made significant progress in recent years towards equality, recognition, and respect. Particularly, their leadership styles, expertise, and priorities have brought immense benefit to diplomatic missions around the world, contributing and making a positive difference to all men and women without regard to nationality, race, religion, language, or even political views. In this week's episode of Bridges, get to know a 40-year veteran of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Miss Visitacion Asiddao, and her experiences as a diplomat and an attache at the Philippine Permanent Mission to the United Nations in Geneva. Bago po ang lahat, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Ako si Louis Benedict Ignacio, welcoming you once again to another exciting and inspiring episode of Bridges. Binabati ko rin ang lahat ng alumni natin saan man kayong naroon ngayon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Bridges is our University of Santo Tomas Alumni Association virtual talk show that showcases our notable Thomasian alumni to share their experience and expertise on various topics for everyone's lifelong learning. Today's episode is brought to you by the UST Alumni Association Incorporated. Before we continue, may I ask our audience to please remember to like, share our show, and subscribe to our UST Thomasian Alumni Community YouTube channel and follow our Facebook page. Ito po ay isang malaking pagsuporta sa ating mga programa. Maraming salamat po. At hindi ko na patatagalin pa at kakausapin na natin ang ating panauhin ngayong hapon. Exciting ang magiging usapan natin ngayong hapon na ito, dahil tulad ng ilang pagkakataon sa Bridges, international ang flavor ng ating discussion ngayong hapon, and very significant as well as we celebrate Women's Month this month of March. But before everything else, I'll introduce our guest this afternoon. Our guest this afternoon is Visitacion Asiddao. Everyone calls her Bess. Okay, very cool. Bess. She's a UST elementary and high school graduate, batch 74. She took up AB Commerce at the College of the Holy Spirit, where she majored in Asian Studies and Business Management. She also took a diploma course in International Studies at the Escuela Diplomática in Madrid, Spain. Bess is now retired from government service after a 40-year stint at the Department of Foreign Affairs. She served in the Home Office of Philippine embassies in Mexico, Prague, Beijing, Washington, D.C., and at the Philippine Permanent Mission to the United Nations in Geneva. She is currently with the UST Alumni Association, member of the board of the DFA Retirees Association. She dedicates 2 days a week to dancing and at her barangay in Project 6. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, fellow Thomasians, good afternoon. Let's all welcome Ma'am Bess. Hello, Ma'am Bess.
Hello, Dr. Louie, and magandang hapon. Good afternoon to our listeners, to our viewers.
Thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us this afternoon. We're so glad to have you this afternoon to share with us your journey to places, literally and figuratively, places around the world with your foreign service or with your service and experience with the Foreign Affairs Department. But first, it has been a long time since your UST days, Ma'am Bess, no? Dito ka elementary and high school. Practically, dito ka lumaki, dito ka nagdalaga, up to high school. How was it? How was it as a student back then? And what are your beautiful memories as a student growing up in UST?
Doc Louie, it has been so many years na, and vague memory of what it is like to be in the elementary. But recently, we had a 50th anniversary of our high school, and that brought back a flood of memories na familiar faces, and it's as if we were transported back to the old UST building. And those were happy times. Ang main struggles mo were passing your exams, getting past the discipline, following the discipline of Mrs. Murillo, our principal, who is so a disciplinarian. Takot na takot kami sa kanya. But you know, on hindsight, kami ngayon, when we were discussing about how disciplinarian Mrs. Murillo was dito sa girls section, we were saying, oh, that kind of discipline carried us to other aspects of our adult life. Meron kaming routine na pina-follow, meron kaming parang conscience na pinapakinggan. Those were my happy memories of high school. I was a shy student, but you know, as you grow older, you evolve, and you come out of that character. Your character comes out.
Yes. I totally agree, no? Kasi ma'am, di ba, talagang formation years ang especially high school years, no? Talagang formation years, napakaraming experiences na makukuha natin in our high school years that will really make a dent or make a long-lasting effect in our decisions even when we grow older. No? Speaking of which, in your UST years, Ma'am Bess, what do you remember most that has contributed much to your work in foreign service? When you were younger, naisip mo ba talaga na mag-government work ka, mag-government service ka, much in particular foreign service, naisip mo na ba yun? Was there a particular experience in high school? And do you think which experiences in high school ang nagtulak sa'yo at nagsabi sa'yo, kaya ko to, I can go to government service, I can do foreign service? Experiences in high school ang nagtulak sa'yo at nagsabi sa'yo, kaya ko to, I can go to government service, I can do foreign service.
In my younger days, you have a romanticized view of what you will be in your adult life. So in my young mind, I would be traveling. And sabi nila ng mga matanda, oh, you would want to go to foreign service because meron kami mga kamag-anak. You would want to. So that stuck in my mind. And then, yung mga history teachers ko, they were all outstanding history teachers. And they painted to me pictures of different countries that had attraction on, had a pull on me. So that it was easy for me to decide which to major in when I go into college, much to the disappointment of my parents, because my parents, they're into business. My father being half Chinese. We lived along España, in fact, between Ramon Magsaysay and UST. It is along that block. And so it was very natural for me to be sent to UST, actually. But we are the kind of family or businessman's family who had that house along España, a store in España, and had a mezzanine for our residents. And I wanted to be out of that kind of environment. Sabi ko, ayoko ata ng ganito. And gusto ko ng something to get out of that environment and that culture too. So going into college, it was very easy to say that this is what I want to take, foreign service. But since there was no foreign service program at the school I went to in college, the next best thing was Asian studies, which was perfect and it geared to my liking as well. And sa UST, the teachers were of high caliber. And I do not say this because baka andyan sila nakikinig, but it is true. When we took up our NCEE ang dami sa amin 99 plus. And so the guidance counselor was just telling us, oh, you can do this in different directions. Ikaw na bahala kasi magaling ka naman pala dito, magaling ka dyan. So, ang broad ng binibigay sa akin. So sabi ko, okay, I'm going to focus on AB and I'm going to focus also on BS Commerce because my parents are in the business. I just want to be an obedient daughter. But at the back of my mind, hindi ko gagawin yun. But, you know, as a young person, siguro negotiator na ako. Okay, I'll take the course that you want, but I'll also take the course that I want. And let's see from there.
Ma'am, was it difficult for you, especially that, syempre in the previous generations, talagang kapag sinabi natin na education, the decision somehow still comes from the parents, and they really have shaped and molded you and have decided already on what particular program or course you will take in college. But in your story, and given that you are a woman, was it easy during that time to really assert that this is what I want, I will compromise with what you want? But was it easy for you to say that I know what I want, this is what I want, I'll think of a way that I can compromise with what you want and still do what I really want? No? Kasi, syempre, during that time, talagang napakalakas pa din naman, well, up until today, malakas pa din naman yung family figure, no? For Filipinos. But especially for a woman, especially for a daughter, talagang most of the time, nakaset na yan, no? Naset na yan ng parents nila. But how was it for you? Was it easy for you? Was it difficult for you to explain that to your parents during that time?
My parents, fortunately, are the listening kind. Pero they expressed their desire for me to be a business, to follow their footsteps, because that is what put food on the table. And they were very proud about their achievements. Pero nga, and I say this with shame, actually, with my parents when I negotiated. I took up a double major. Sa LIACOM is a 5-year course, right? And I was taking 27, 30 units in one semester just so I can finish up the course. And I told my parents that I would give in to their desire for me to become a businessman, but I would also like to take up as to satisfy a learning a yearning for learning or more knowledge on history, on current events, which my father, I think, understood at the back of his mind. He understood what I want. And I think he, with pride that his daughter has a mind of her own, I think hindi lang niya sinasabi, it's not expressed, but I can feel it. So that it was easy for me to negotiate after college to say that maybe this is not for me, this is not what I want. And so he let me. I am very fortunate that way, that I have parents who are broad-minded, or I'm lucky because they have set the second daughter as going to be the doctor in the house. So that was a burden lifted off my shoulder. It was easy for me. So, yun, ganun lang kadali yung pag-negotiate ko. And it helped that my dean at my college asked me to teach. So I taught for 2 years, and I told my dean I am not for teaching. And so I went to the Department of Foreign Affairs after that.
But going abroad for your diploma, I'm just curious, Ma'am Bess, at what age did you go out for your diploma course? And speaking of supportive parents, were you alone, or who went with you when you studied for your diploma course in Asian Studies?
I wasn't young anymore when I went to La Escuela Diplomática in Madrid. In fact, one of the qualifications, one of their criteria is for you to already speak Spanish, because the medium is in the Spanish language. And so I was at the Philippine Embassy in Mexico for 7 years, and staying there in Mexico for 7 years, you could pick up a word or two. And when I went back home after my Mexico, my stint at the embassy in Mexico, I knew a little bit of Spanish, because I had to learn Spanish formally and informally. And so when there was a scholarship being offered at the Foreign Service Institute, that's our educational arm of the Department of Foreign Affairs, they took me in as the lone candidate at that time. And I was already, I think, about 35 years old.
Yeah,
34, 35 years old when I went there, mature. And going to Mexico as my first assignment, I was younger then. Yes, I was alone, and as I have always been alone in all other foreign missions. But it was easy being, I think it's easier for us if you're alone to adjust, because ikaw lang yung naka-focus ka eh. Unlike some who have children, their spouse and children, you have to take this into consideration. I didn't have that. So it was easier for me.
Correct. Speaking of your stints, no, let's go into that particular aspect of your life. You've been in the foreign service, and you've occupied number of posts in different countries and embassies. But please enlighten us in general and in particular. In general, what's the function of a Philippine embassy? Baka ito ay refresher for our listeners. But in particular, what were your roles in your work in the different Philippine embassies in Mexico, in Prague, or even in United Nations. So, what in general, what's the function of a Philippine embassy, and in particular, what have been your roles in these offices, Ma'am Bess?
The Philippine Embassy promotes the Philippine interests. Philippine interests would include bilateral, political, economics, trade, cultural, and the role of an embassy personnel is to, if you're in the cultural diplomacy section, then you promote our culture, the Filipino culture, bring it closer to the host country that you're in. And so on my first assignment at the embassy in Mexico, I was first in cultural diplomacy and then transferred to the trade and economic section because of my BSc background. That helped. And I told my father that helped me a lot. He should be proud of that. And as a cultural, in the cultural diplomacy, as a cultural officer, I am proud to say that we brought the Madrigal singers to participate in a music festival in Guadalajara. And with pride, because the Madrigal singers, they're the best choir, I think, in the world. Their music will touch you. And you'd be so proud to be called a Filipino when it's the Madrigal singers on the background singing lovely tunes. And I was seated beside a US citizen, and he was telling me, if the world economy is ruled by music, you'd be a superpower. That's how he was amazed. That's how amazed he was of the music brought on by the Madrigal singers. And I'm proud that I am an instrument in bringing them over. And it's funny, in different posting, I would be encountering the Madrigal singers, although in different generations. In Beijing, they were there. In Washington, D.C., they were there. And so you keep renewing and pushing for this cultural treasure that we have in the host countries that I was assigned to.
You've mentioned, Ma'am Bess, that one of the main roles of a Philippine embassy is to really push for the Philippine agenda, or Philippines really to represent the Philippines in the host state, host country. And given that your first assignment is in the cultural division, was there any particular cultural trait, cultural values that the embassy would like to showcase to the world, whether officially or not officially, that whenever you have functions or events in the embassy or in your host state, was there a very specific, very particular Philippine cultural trait that you really are pushing for? And you always use that to introduce the Philippines. Was there that particular conscious selection of a Philippine culture?
In the past, during my time prior to Washington, D.C., we did not have that. And because probably I think each host country would have its their unique character. With Mexico, for example, you just have to choose the interest you have and push for it. Because in Mexico, for example, a far country from the Philippines, and yet we share so much similarities. The first time I entered Mexico, I thought everybody was a Filipino. They were wearing white shirt with big pockets, but the shape was like a barong Tagalog, the work barong Tagalog, not the long sleeves. And I was looking at everyone, and I really thought I was in the Philippines. And then, of course, they start talking, and okay, I'm in a different country. And then you get deeper into their culture, and you find out so much similarity exists between you and Mexico that it was just easy to cross the border, learn the language, and there I was, they're transported to the Philippines or I'm transported to Mexico. It was easy. And I love learning their language because of the music. The music reminds me of kundiman or any ballad in the Philippines. It's so romantic. It's so sweet. It's similar. And so I started learning, in fact, the language through music, their old kind of music.
Wow, that's a very, very good way of learning language. So, I asked Ma'am Bess because looking at your experience, you've been to Mexico, you've been to Europe, you've been to Beijing and the United States. So these are countries definitely with varying, extremely different cultures, no? And for a person to work in these countries with different cultures, I'm sure it will really take a lot to adjust and to understand and appreciate these cultures, no? How are you able to manage this? How are you able to adjust yourself into a new culture every time that you would be assigned to a different country? Do you think it has got to do with being a Filipino, or do you think it has got to do with you being a Thomasian for that matter, no? Kasi talagang diverse eh, from Mexico to China to the United States and Geneva. So talagang kailangan mo mag-adjust every time. So how are you able to do it? What were your strategies? What's in you as a Filipino or as a Thomasian that made it easy or possible for you to adjust?
Ang Thomasian values of competence, of you being authentic to yourself. Because once you know yourself, madali atang mag-adjust to where you are. Because you would know, this is what I like, this is what I do not like. Kasi you're authentic to yourself, you know yourself. But as a diplomat, you are equipped with skills that the Foreign Service Institute has taught us to, kaya ikaw yung naa-assign eh, kasi ikaw yung the suitability is a consideration when one is assigned to a country. When I went to the Mexico part, I already more or less explained to you. It was an easy way to adopt. It was an easy culture, an easy country to adopt to. But going to Prague, that was a completely off to me. I was in a Central Europe that is much aligned with the at the time USSR policy. It was a closed society, in fact, and they just opened. This was in the early 90s. They just opened up, and you can feel as you walk along the street that there is a resentment, that there is a foreigner, there is a kind of xenophobia, that if they're not like me, then they're suspicious of you. I'm talking about the older generations, because the younger generations are completely different from the older ones. But the older ones are very suspicious. You don't get served in a restaurant immediately. They look at you as if you're a total stranger. There's no humanity at all, I feel. But once you again get to know their language, and it takes a while to get to know the language, once you start at least learning something about the language, ordering in a restaurant, ordering in the Czech language, they don't warm up to you. They're not like Asians or Southeast Asians who have a ready smile. They really have stern faces. They have, and so you're scared, but you blurt out their language, and you can feel that they have respect for you. So in that way, I learned that going to countries, you need to learn a modicum of a small amount of vocabularies to please, not to please, but to get by, to touch them, to be able to communicate. And that's, I think, a Thomasian value too: competence, pride in your work. Just pray. I think pray to the Lord that you'll get through to this. Being prayerful is very much a part of me, and I think that's my formative education in the UST, that you pray. And prayer is like talking to God. Making decisions, you pray. In all aspects of your life, if you're afraid, if you're being alone in a foreign country, in a strange land, you pray for guidance, for discernment, for just the little things, and it helps you. So I think in that way, UST has been a meaningful education for me, even when that education has been so many pushback to many years ago. It's still there. I think it goes with you. It's in your DNA.
Correct, correct. Sabi nga, once a Thomasian, always a Thomasian, di ba, Ma'am Bes? So talaga yung mga lessons, even especially in our younger formative years, talaga it will stick with us, no? Ma'am, speaking of language, and I think your sharing of your experience in Mexico, especially using music as a way of learning the language, and then your experience in Prague, for example, how language can create that spark, no, between you, a foreigner, in a specific country. How important is language in terms of your role in foreign service and the function of the embassy in different host countries? Of course, we know that officially, formally, we use English, no, as a medium of communication, whether it's on written documents or in events, we speak in English. But in pushing for the agenda of the state of the Philippines, for example, and in using cultural diplomacy, no, how important do you think is language to all of this?
Let's reverse the situation. Here in the Philippines, when you hear a foreign diplomat speaking your language, you're tickled pink. I think it's the same true in all people of the world. They appreciate your effort to learn their language, because learning the language is just not learning the language, period. You learn the language, you cross some borders. There's the cultural part of it, and the way that the manner of how they conduct business, and so on and so forth. There's so much to a language that a diplomat should have that skill, and to know that it could be a good weapon, instrument in you trying to get across your message. You know, you begin by the greetings in their language. Because you cannot, I would not be able to discuss technically a very long conversation in the Czech language. It's a very difficult language to learn in the first place. And so, but the greetings, at least, being able to know that you can order in the restaurant, being able to get a cab and point directions, they appreciate this, as we would appreciate if a U.S. diplomat, a South Korean diplomat would do the same thing for us, right? And somehow it's a leverage. When you want something from them, they would accede to you easily. I know that I have for example, we had a very large interparliamentary delegation from the Senate. We have 7 senators coming in to visit Prague. It's an official visit. and I was assigned to Senator Miriam Defensor because everyone wants not to have anything to do with her. So, but we got by smoothly with our transactions. I think, to me, I think the Czech Republic was pleased with the delegation. We were able to get something out of that from them.
Ma'am, you've already shared your experience, your stories both in Mexico and in Prague. But I'm wondering if there are bits and pieces of experiences that are really memorable for you while you're in Beijing or in US serving in Washington DC. Were there experiences that are really memorable for you, whether it's challenging or happy memories as part of your work in the Foreign Service?
One memory stands out to this day, and I was assigned in Beijing as a what we call an assistant to nationals, and I take care of our the needs of our kababayans while there. So unfortunately, a lady was a Filipina was indicted for illegal drug trafficking, but she was caught along the borders of China, that's the Uyghur region, and China, Afghanistan. She was caught in that region. It's very far from Beijing, and my mission is to get her child, who is 2 years old at that time, take her and bring her to the Philippines, because she cannot serve her life sentence inside the prison with a child. So my mission was to take this child and bring her back to the Philippines. If you're a mother, never mind that she is never mind that she was going to be imprisoned, but she's a mother who was with a child 24 hours a day for 2 years. Prying the child out of the mother is already a task that you don't want to go through, actually. So in my mind, I was praying, strategizing on what to do. I was sent alone. I was sent alone to a military barracks where the Filipina was imprisoned all through the entire proceedings of her trials. And now she's going to be imprisoned after the trial, and she was meted a life sentence. And I had to take her 2-year-old child to the Philippines. And it took all of the psychology 101 that I had learned back in college, what to do. I have pleaded, I have laughed with her, I have cried with her, I was stern with her, I scolded her, everything, it didn't work. Finally, she said, dalhin mo ako sa hospital kasi hindi pa ako nakaka-hospital all throughout these years. Pati na rin si baby, dalhin natin sa hospital. And so we went to the hospital, and after which I took them to a restaurant. This with 7 soldiers who were assigned to secure the safety of both the child and the mother. And as we were eating, we were all in good mood. And after the lunch, I went to another part of the restaurant. Outside of the restaurant, I was like a tourist. I suddenly found myself enjoying the landscape. It was a totally different demography, totally different landscape from what I was used to in Beijing. And so this is in Kashgar. And I was taking pictures and all that. And then suddenly I just heard the mother crying out loud, eto na ba yon? And she was taken to a car, and I was left now with a child. Remember, I am not married. I do not have a child. I do not know what to do with this child. But yet my mission is to bring her back to the Philippines. I had to go to Beijing first. It's a 6-hour flight from Urumqi to Beijing. And I was thinking, this Chinese, the Chinese, most of the Chinese population, I don't think they'll take kindly to a child who looks every bit a Nigerian. Oh, by the way, the Filipino was married to a Nigerian. And so the child looked every inch of her, the body as Nigerian. I was afraid of she being treated badly. And so when we entered the airplane, I just placed her in the middle so that she'll be protected and not be seen by anyone. But of course, everybody saw her because she's so different. And the children inside the airplane would give her candies, would take pictures with her. They were trying to be sweet with her. And so my fears were, I heave a sigh of relief after this encounters. And when I went, and then I went to Beijing to my house. I brought her to my house because it was in the evening, and she was looking at everything. Because prior to that, the only thing that she saw was the four corners of her room in the military barracks. And she was looking at my television. And so I turned on the television, and I turned on to the Cartoon Network, and she was just staring at it. I was dead tired, and I told her, I'm going to sleep now. Just stay here. And so I slept. The following day when I woke up, she was asleep, and I need to go to the airport to take her back to the Philippines. But anyway, so fast forward, I took her to the Philippines. I was able to hand her to the nearest kin of her mom. But my heart broke. The 2 days that I had with her, my 2-day experience with her, made me realize how our Filipinos, or for that matter, this Filipino lady suffered for her lapse of judgment in carrying drugs. But still, as a mother, I'm not a mother, but I could feel the separation was tearing at your heart. And so in my next encounters with the Filipinos, I would always tell them to be cautious, to be always to be focused on what they're doing. That when something is wrong, it is wrong, and it has a penalty, especially in a country like China.
Correct.
But on a good note, as a cultural diplomacy program, we had many projects that brought out the Filipino in me, that brought out the Filipino in them, in our kababayans. And we conducted a food adobo contest, very many variations of cooking adobo. I like that. And then there are children of expatriates, second generation Filipinos who do not know how to speak Filipino or do not know anything about the Filipino culture. We had a running program of teaching them to learn. We had books, and so we had Filipino books. We played Filipino games, children's games. We had imported Filipino street food, and so they had an experience of what fiesta is like.
Yeah.
I like that part.
So I guess, ma'am, this is the compassion, no, of working through you as a foreign service officer, no? Kasi I'm sure dealing with cases like this, especially with the story that you narrated about a mother being separated from her kid, it really entails a lot of compassion for a person to really push through and pull it through the task. So looking at the different experiences that you're sharing with us, it's not all about traveling. Kasi yung iba iniisip, okay, embassy work, I can go from one country to another. More than that, it takes a lot of both competence and compassion, really, to fulfill your responsibility and do your job as a foreign service officer. No, so if that's the case, if it's not just the travel, if it's not that easy, what do you think can you say to individuals who are aspiring to be like you, a foreign service officer who works for the government in general, whether it's in foreign service or here in the national agencies? What can you say to them? I mean, what can you share with them that you think would motivate them to answer the call of serving the nation through government service?
Well, it's not the easiest way to be advertising jobs in the government. One, low pay, for example, low pay and long hours. As a officer in the diplomatic in the embassy, you get it's a 24/7, especially when you are the assistant to nationals officer. You have the emergency hotline, and always there will be a call 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, asking you for some silly questions, but also some serious questions that involve life or an emergency situation. But nevertheless, even with these conditions, I think the experiences we have, or the experiences that I had working with the government, is priceless. Because it's not every day that you're able to help your countrymen. And it's not every day that your Filipino stands out and you being proud that you're a Filipino. You stay in the Philippines and then it's all right. You're a normal part of the population. But there's pride. You have to have pride to stay at the embassy, to be part of the embassy, to be part of the DFA. You need to have pride in your country because you're going to push for its interests. When you do not love your country, when you do not have pride in the achievements of your country, then you do not have any business representing the Philippines. You need that. You need commitment that this is the project and I'm going to push it through no matter what the struggles, no matter the obstacles. I am going to push it through. Bringing in, for example, the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra, 60 members, 60 big members of the there were so many obstacles coming along the way, but we were able to pull it through. And when it did, and it produced the best music it ever had, the auditorium had ever produced, you're proud you did your bit in bringing that culture. It's a rich culture, by the way. We have a very rich culture. But to bring it to another country and say, this is my culture, this is my tradition, it brings even more honor, I think, to me and the humanity to me of being able to bridge that cultural gap. Because, sometimes the other countries would not know anything about you, even if they're neighbors, even if China is just a few hours away, it doesn't know anything about you. The normal on the street population, they don't know anything about you. And then you bring them this beautiful music and they say, it's a rich, beautiful tradition that they're cultured people.
And I guess that brings us to the full circle, no, Ma'am Bess, from being competent to having compassion and being committed to your work. I am a true believer that you through and through, no, is really a Thomasian, a product of Thomasian, and I'm very happy to listen how you brought these teachings of being a Thomasian to your work, and that you are proud of it. Naku, napakaganda ng ating talakayan ngayong hapon at kwentuhan. But unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world, and we are very much limited with our time. It's sayang, no? Kasi it's so engaging, it's so enlightening and inspiring to learn about the work of our foreign service diplomats, and how our ambassadors perform their tasks, just like how Ma'am Bess is doing her job. So marami din tayong aral na natutunan mula ngayong hapong mula sa discussion natin ngayong hapon, no? And we are so blessed to hear it from Ma'am Bess, our fellow Thomasian who has committed her life in serving the government for 40 years in foreign service. So we're so proud of you, Ma'am Bess. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc Louie.
Yes, no, napaka-iksi ng ating oras. It's almost time to finish. But before we do that, no, meron pa mga pahabol na tanong. Last question na po sa iyo, Ma'am Bess. How have the Thomasian values helped and influenced you in the work that you did, and how were you able to use it to overcome the different challenges of your work?
Siguro, you're not conscious about it, but I think naging routine mo na yung magdasal kasi yun ang tinuro sa'yo. So in every decision that you make, you pray. And that's being a Thomasian. And as I said, it's in my DNA. Maski na pagbalik-baliktarin mo ako, magdadasal pa rin ako in the major decisions that I do. Yun ang tinuro sa akin ng mga teachers ko eh. Magdasal, have a communication with God, maski little details, communicate it. Even a thank you is a prayer. So, and I thank the Lord for giving me such wonderful parents that allow me to have this a Thomasian education. And the Thomasian education that was transported into other aspects of my life. And to your students, please make it, if you're still thinking of what career path to take, please think of being a public servant too. It has its gratification.
Beautiful, Ma'am Bess. Thank you very much. Ma'am, last message na. Speaking of to our students, no, our current Thomasians, no, what do you see in the future? Okay, you've already invited them to work in foreign service, but what do you see in the future for our students in terms of working in the foreign service now? Because for 40 years, I'm sure a lot of things have changed in the foreign service work, no? But what can they expect? Okay, what do they need to develop in them so that they can work and enjoy their work just like you in the foreign service?
The DFA is continually evolving, and it has continually professionalizing the institution, and I think it's time that our young students take a look at it as a profession, because there's always a stigma about going into the government service. But the DFA, I am proud to say, produces a number of luminaries, and even with the low pay, sometimes laughable, but now it is because of the standardization, the salary standardization law, it has come up with a good salary rates. But even without that, the government is helpful in some ways in bringing out the projects, in fulfilling our the mandate that we have. So I really invite the students to take a look at it. Look at this as an option, or maybe even go into it, because it's not only the glamour of traveling, and there will be a lot of traveling as part of your work and as part of your personal liking, preference, because you have your vacation leave, and then because you're already outside, you go around the area. There's so many opportunities for travel, so many opportunities for continuing learning, a continuous learning. We have the Foreign Service Institute, who will equip you with more skills and knowledge, so that you will be an effective foreign service leader when your time comes.
Very beautiful. Thank you, Ma'am Bess. For the last one, very last one. What's your message to our students, to all our listeners, that you think can or even as a Filipino, as a woman, as a former government employee, what can you do? What can our viewers and listeners do to help us continuously bridge or be bridges of faith, hope, and love in our lives and in the lives of the people around us?
Practice humanity. Be human. Kasi yun lang ang makakapag reach out ng faith in you, trust in all the people that they're doing good, hope that everything will turn out to be better in the future, and love everyone, because in loving everyone, it's going to be a peaceful world, hindi ba? It's a beauty pageant answer, but it's in fact true eh. If with faith, hope, and love, andyan na lahat, yung humanity mo, your compassion it will be a better world.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Bess. Very beautiful last message to our viewers. Thank you, Ma'am Bess. Again, ladies and gentlemen, our friends, Ma'am Asuncion Bess Asiddao, and we thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience to us this afternoon, up to this evening. It was very nice talking with you. I hope we'll see you again around campus in UST, if not in other events of the UST Alumni Association. So again, Ma'am Bess, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We just concluded our conversation with Ma'am Bess. Ang saya ng discussion na to, kasi you get to see how people work and how they manifest themselves being Thomasians, no? In so many instances, in this case, in government work, in particular in foreign service. So we thank the UST Alumni Association Incorporated. We thank Bridges, no, for giving us the opportunity to listen to these stories. Before we officially end our session this afternoon, just a quick announcement. Some announcement lang po in observance of the Holy Week. We will not have a Bridges episode next week. We invite everyone to use the time to reflect and remember the passion of our Lord. And we'll see you again the week after for another episode of Bridges. So before we end the show, we would like to thank all of our alumni, students, and friends who have faithfully watched and shared and liked our Bridges episodes. We share with you the blessings of Bridges, and to continue to stay and be connected with us, kindly like and share our show and subscribe to our UST Thomasian Alumni Community YouTube channel and Facebook page. The past episodes of Bridges can be watched You can go back to the many episodes of Bridges and watch it through our YouTube channel. Again, this has been Louis Ignacio. Thank you for joining us today. Do watch Bridges again on the week after the Holy Week for another exciting episode. Be with us at Bridges and let us build together bridges of faith, bridges of hope, and bridges of love. Have a holy and blessed observance of the Holy Week. God bless all of you. Mabuhay and enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye!